Good morning, everyone. Hello, hello. I am back. It's Krista Ritzkis with Simply Creating, and we are going to be talking today about something that I really love doing. It's a neat technique. I actually had a customer see this card in the catalog and go, "How do I do that?" And so I thought I would do a Technique Tuesday. I'm so excited to actually, like last week we talked a little bit about how to store stuff, but it wasn't a technique, a creative technique. And so it feels like it's been a really long time since I've shown you a creative technique, and I'm really excited about getting into this one. So this is the card. I'm going to show you the pages in the catalog. So you can see this card right here. And we're using this stamp set along with the little M size, which are really they're cheap, $5.15. You can use them over and over again. There is another stamp set that looks very much like the one we're using, and it's the same idea. Big card front. It has some extra little bits to it, and then there are two more M size stamp sets that are all designed to fit inside the image. So here is the flourishing details and background. You'll see that it's got a nice big card front image, and there's a lot of little extra little things. I didn't use any of those. I just used this, and these are the four little stamps, and we're going to use this one today. I used this one on our sample, and I made this card exactly the way it was in the catalog. And so if you're curious about, first I'll teach you how I made this. And I'm not going to show you every single thing because that would take too long. We're not going to do any actual heat embossing, but if you have a heat gun, like we sell this one by Ranger, and it is awesome. It's nice and quiet, and it's got a lot of heat, and works really well. I love it. So this was done with white embossing powder. So you stamp your image with Versamark, and then you sprinkle it with white detail superfine embossing powder that we also sell from Ranger. And I don't know if it's going to come through in the video, but there is some kind of like a gloss to it. It's very subtle, and you really only see it when you move it in the light. But anyway, so the colors I used for this card, so it's ballerina in the middle, then lilac, and then grape. Okay, but I'm going to make a different one, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. So this one has already been embossed. So I already heat embossed it, and we have an anti-static pouch that is perfect. You just rub it over your paper before you actually do your embossing, and it's awesome. There are lots of tools out there for sponging, lots and lots of them. So, but I like using this round sponge. It is cheap. I don't know exactly how much. I've already used half of it, and it can be used over and over and over again. So I like to cut mine into sixes. Some people like quarters. Some people do smaller, but this I find is a good size. And so now I have my three colors. So I would just, once I'm done, I'll just wash these. Sorry, I'm out of the frame here. I'll just wash these, and I can dry them, and then they can be used for other colors. So the colors I'm going to do today are these ones here. So Carolina, Bluebird, and Sapphire. Now, if you wanted to use a slightly different color combination, sort of how this card had purple and pink, I would suggest you could even throw in a wisteria instead of the Carolina. But I like the all blue look today. So what we're going to do, I'm going to pop the lid off that one. I'm going to grab one of my sponges. Now you'll see here, this is my all-purpose mat. One of them, I actually own two. One of them I cut up into 4 so that I would have a smaller surface if I needed to, and it's perfect for this kind of thing if we don't need a lot. So we're starting with the lightest, and I'm going to use the rounded side of my sponge, and I'm going to start in the middle, but I'm not going to do the whole middle. So this is where you kind of need to see where your embossing is, and I'm not sure it's going to come through on the actual video, but let me just move that over here. So we're going to ink up our sponge really well. Sometimes if it's brand new, you want to rub it in the ink and dab and dab. And because this is a slightly darker color, you want to go with light circular motions, and we're going to go right, like I can see where the edge of the middle of the embossed images, and we're just going to go really lightly, and it makes that fun squeaky sound. So I guess this would probably be called an emboss resist. Oh, got something on my table there. An emboss resist idea, and we just ink up the colors. Hi Karen, good to have you on today. Let me know if you've done this technique before. I always like to start with the lightest color because it's going to have the least amount of impact, and you can build up the colors really easily with the lightest. And then you can just kind of add to it, and I do have something on my desk, a little black thing. So again, I like the sponge because it doesn't, it adds a bit of, there's a bit of texture there, but also, oh, you've not done this yet. Well, there you go. If you've got heat embossing stuff, here's a neat technique for you. I like using the sponge because it's not as dense, so there's not as much, the ink is not, it's not like the other foam tools that we have from, that kind of go with the Distress Oxide inks. So I'm going to set that one aside. I'm going to move on to Bluebird, and I'm using a different sponge, and what I'm going to do is kind of overlap what I've already done. The sponge is not as porous, like it's got, or maybe that's not the right word, but it doesn't have, it's not as dense. That's the word I'm looking for. It's not as dense. And so it has a little bit of freedom in the movement and stuff. It's not as hard to mess up. I'll show you what I mean when I show you another example later of something that I made using the Distress Oxide. I've got another example for you. And you can add as little or as much ink as you want to this. If you want it to be really dark, you can add more ink to it. It's entirely up to you. So you'll notice that the Bluebird, the Carolina, sorry, which was my first color, and I messed up a little bit there, is kind of fading into the background. So I'm going to go back in with, sorry, I've got paint lid or ink lids everywhere now. I'm going to come back in and just go over it again, kind of the way you would with a Distress Oxide ink, which I do hope to do some Technique Tuesdays with this, with the Distress Oxides. Now they're starting to come back into stock. Now we're going to do Sapphire with, again, another sponge. I love how the design comes out when you work, as you work ink on top of it. Now you could use a clear, that is like that's an option as well. You absolutely could do that if you wanted to, clear embossing powder, but I think the white will add more. So you'll notice I'm adding more ink here. So I'm not liking how it's not dark enough for me, and I'm really darkening the edges of my card. And you'll see I've missed some here. I'm going to go back in and add more ink. I'm just adding a little bit along the edges there. This is where an all-purpose mat is really, really helpful because it's not going to get on your table at all. And obviously I've got a small piece here, but so it's great to just get all messy, and the back of your card is going to get all messy. So you'll want to cut, don't do this on your card base, is kind of what I'm saying. This should be just the card front because you're going to get really, really messy. Okay. Which one did I just do? Bluebird. Okay, so I'm going to come back in with my Bluebird, which is my middle color, and just blend a little more. Blend a little more. I know my fingers are inky, so I'm being careful not to touch the middle of my card. You want to make sure that you don't do that to yourself, because that would be very sad. You do all this work and then you get a fingerprint in the middle. So I don't know where you're watching from, but we have more snow this morning. More snow. And my kids are happy. I don't mind the snow right now. I don't want it all the time, but. So again, we can add more ink. That's why I like to do a light layer first, and then we can go back in with more colors. We can add more to the middle here with our, this is the Carolina, the latest color. You see how I can just add a little more, blend it all in together. Looks like I've got it a little bit dark there, but that's okay. I'm still not happy with the way the outside is, so I'm actually going to add a little more to the corners to make it really look shadowed and shaded. And I think I'm good with that. I'm going to move these off so I don't end up getting stuff on my ink or on my project. Now comes the fun part of matching these all up. All right, now what we're going to do is grab a Kleenex or a paper towel, dry, and just rub to get the excess ink off the surface of your heat embossing. You don't want to rub too much or you end up getting like little bits of Kleenex. I guess with paper towel it might not happen quite so easily. But then it really allows your heat embossing to pop. Now the other option is you could actually go back in with this and remove the heat embossing powder by adding more heat. I think you put some wax paper on top of it, kind of like ironing. You could probably stick, and then you can actually remove the heat embossed powder. I have not tried that. I will say that I have not tried that. So I don't know how well it works, but I have seen other people do it. So there, now my heat embossing just really, really pops. I'm going to move this out of the way because I have ink on it. And I'm going to stamp I'm just going to get some of this ink off my fingers with my Kleenex here. I have chosen to use Thinking of You. Now there's another part to that stamp that says in your time of need. That could go on the inside or any of those kinds of things. Alrighty, I'm going to use Archival Black. It's my new favorite black. I love how deep it stamps. It is just beautiful. And I'm not worrying about what's underneath my card and stuff like that and foaming it up because this isn't really a super solid. I'm going to anchor my hand on my table so that I can get it nice and straight. Probably didn't put it on the block straight, but that's okay. Now I'm going to leave it there for a sec, right? If you remember back to my very first technique Tuesday, I talked about inking or stamping techniques, and one of the things you want to do is leave your image on your project for a little while so that you get a nice crisp image. I'm going to clean that later with my chamois, but there is the card, or at least part of the card. So now, what about the rest of it, right? Because this does not look the same, right? There's more to it. So what I did is I matched my cardstock to the outside ink. So with this one, I did grape ink, so I put grape cardstock. So for our card here, we're using sapphire. Now, there is a light side or there is a dark side. And I think I'm going to go with the dark side because it pops just a little bit more. The dark is really the true color side. So you can see how much ink got on the back of this. You would not want to have that on your actual card or anything like that. And we're going to line this up. And if you're curious to know what the measurements are, I will put that in the comments, but I'll tell you now too. So the white piece that we heat embossed is 4 inches by 5 1/4. The sapphire, or your colored piece, is 4 1/8. Yeah, I went into eighths, by 5 3/8. The black that I am putting it on right now is the size of the card front, so 5 1/2 by 4 1/4. Now I have my card base, and I like to do the front. So if you look at where the fold, where the fold is, the bumpy side should be the inside. It just folds nicer that way. We're gonna add some of this. So you'll also notice that I'm putting my card together before I add any embellishing. I just find that easier. But I also like to do all of my assembly on the card front before I actually put it on my card base, so that, you know, if you screw up, it's easier to take it off. All right, I'm gonna leave it flat, and then I want to show you what I did with the embellishments here. I used, now this container, sorry, this is a retired container. We don't sell these anymore, but we have these lovely round craft jars that I actually need to buy some because I'm running out of these. These are our Bluebird loose sequins. So all I did was I grabbed a pair of tweezers. Now these are close to my heart tweezers, and unfortunately we don't sell them anymore either. And I grabbed my green Tombow glue, which this one's almost empty. So I'm going to let it sit for a second upside down. And what I did is, so I'm just going to pull this up so you can see the card. I found a little dot. Now, I did this actually exactly like the card in the catalog. So there's one there, there's one here, there's one here, and they're different sizes. So the ones in the corners are larger, and the ones here and in the middle are smaller. And all I did, honestly, this was it. I just grabbed some from here with my tweezers, making sure they're all the same shade, right? You don't want them to be different. Don't worry, I'm not going to put all these on. But this glue works really well. You could use liquid glass too, but I find I'm really liking this glue. Hence, it's almost empty. Should turn it upside down before I started. So I'm just holding my sequin with my tweezers, and I'm going to put a couple of dots. Yeah, it's shaking because I'm squeezing so hard. I don't know if you can see that. Just putting it, whoa, shoot. That's what happens when you're at the end of your glue. It comes out all of a sudden. So we've got a bigger one, so I'm just going to stick it right down here, and it's probably not going to stick real well. It's going to stick to my finger because there's now glue on the inside, but this glue works really well when it comes out nicely. There we go. And you can very easily just let it dry, and it will stick beautifully. So I'm not going to show you all of them because that will take too much time, because I do want to show you the other card I made. So this one I made with Distress Oxide inks. Let me get that glue out of the way so I don't accidentally knock it over. So this one I made with Distress Oxide inks. So you can see the difference. They're similar colors, but if you want like a really bright color and deep, Distress Oxide inks with the foam applicator, the mini tools, are awesome. So the colors that I used for this one were Chipped Sapphire on the outside, Seedless Preserves in the middle, and then Peacock Feathers in the very center. And then I did a little bit of spraying with water, which is why it's a bit mottled and it didn't work perfectly in some spaces. But I used the watercolor cardstock for this one because I was going to add a water technique. But it looks, this is more celebratory, that's the way. And so it's bright. You could imagine doing some really fun bright colors with this technique, and then you throw in a happy stamp like "Thank you kindly." But because my sample here is a thinking of you, which is kind of a sadder one, I wanted to put a little bit more muted colors. So anyway, that is our inking with heat embossing. Super simple to do. You heat emboss. Don't forget to use your anti-static pouch. Heat emboss with white, and depending on what your design is, you might want to use the superfine detail kind. Heat emboss that. Just choose your 3 colors. I wouldn't suggest more than 3. Choose your 3 colors, work from the inside out, and blend as you go. You can use sponges, you can use sponge daubers, you can use the mini tool foam applicator that we sell, anything, and then just add your embellishments. They can be sparkles, they can be gems, they can be the sequins from the loose sequins packs. There's lots of opportunities and things that you can do. So I hope you found that helpful, and tune in again next week and we'll see what I've got up my sleeves then. So thank you for watching. Again, it's Krista Ritzkis with Simply Creating, and I hope you're having a great day. All right, bye.